Firstly, just want to say good afternoon to everyone and thank you for joining us here today for our CPD webinar. My name is Finn Tobin. I'm the Communications Manager at ARB and I'm going to be hosting today's session. With me on screen is Rosie Fairfax, our CPD Manager. So today, Rosie is going to be running a live demo to show you how to record and submit your CPD on MyARB. And talking through some of the things that you'll have to demonstrate in your CPD records for them to meet the scheme's requirements. We'll be running a Q&A later on. And thank you to those of you who've already sent in questions, but do feel free to submit questions at any time using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. We are recording today's session. You should have got a notification for that. And we will be sending it to everyone who was registered. So everybody here today and anybody who registered and hasn't turned up. Please do feel free to share that recording with colleagues or anyone else you know who's yet to start recording their CPD or might find this session interesting or useful. So just before I hand over to Rosie, I just want to give a quick overview of the scheme. So the ARB CPD scheme launched at the beginning of this year, and it was our response to the Building Safety Act and the responsibilities it placed on us to monitor the continuing professional development that architects complete throughout their careers. The scheme is designed to be flexible and accessible, and it's focused on learning outcomes and activities. The focus on learning outcomes, it makes it quite different from a lot of other schemes, which are based on hours spent or point systems. The scheme is intended to help all architects to maintain and develop their professional competence throughout their careers and to give assurance to the public and those who use the services of architects about the profession's commitment to lifelong learning. Okay, so with that introduction over, I'm going to hand over to Rosie for her demo and presentation.
Thank you very much, Finn. So just before we start, if you have any questions, please just put them into the chat and we'll answer them at the end. So let me just share my screen. Okay. Can I just confirm you can all see the CPD live demo page?
Yeah, you can see the presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay. So today we are going to have a live demo of MyARB. So I'll go through what you need to do if you're using MyARB to record your record, CPD records, and what to do if you are REBA member. Then we'll have a look at what to include in your activity records, as well as what to include in your learning reflection. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A session so you can ask any questions that you may have. So if we go to the, I'm taking us to the test site. So this is what the portal looks like. Okay. Again, I'm just going to ask Finn, can you just confirm you can see the portal? Brilliant. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so you should all have your access to your profile on MyARB. Everyone has it, whether you are UK based or overseas, whether you're REBA member or not, you all have your own profile on MyARB. You do need to renew your registration for 2025 via the portal, which is why everyone's got their own profile. So you just simply log in. Sorry, my internet's a bit slow this morning or this afternoon. Okay, so when you go in, you go to your home page. If you haven't already renewed your registration for 2025, there will be a yellow button here on your home page that says pay 2025 retention fee. Just click on that and it will start your process. But today we're looking at CPD. So to the left of your screen, there is the navigation field. If you log in via your mobile, then the menu is at the top of the screen and it's usually got the 3 bars to open it. But if you're on a desktop or anything else, it's to the left. And as you can see, you've got home, my profile, my active documents, my safekeeping documents, my CPD, my transactions, additional services. So if you click on my CPD, this takes you to your CPD section. There are 2 pages. You are taken straight away to the CPD page. But before we look at that properly, I just want to quickly look at the personal development plan page. So if you click on that, it takes you to your personal development plan. So your PDP is optional. You do not have to do this for your CPD record, but we do think it is a useful tool. So at the start of the year, or even at the end of the previous year, if you have a look at what you're doing for the next year and have a think about what you want to do, then you can just write your PDP here. It doesn't have to be a paragraph. It doesn't have to be proper sentences. It's your plan, so you can write what you want. So you could say, by January, know about new fire suppressant system. You could say, you could just put, I need to know X, Y, and Z. How you write your PDP is your choice, but it's there and it should be considered a working document. So throughout the year, you should look at it, review it, go, oh, this project has dropped, but I've taken up this new project, so I need to change my ambition, what I want to achieve for this part of the year. So see it as a working document, look at it, review it, and change it as and when you need to. And all you do is write it in your box, and then you click submit to save. And there it is. Going to your CPD. So this is where the page you actually log your CPD entries. So at the top, you have a reminder of what the mandatory topics are, just to help you. You'll see your name and the year, the record. And then there are 3 sections. So you've got CPD activities, approved CPD records, and then your CPD history. So CPD activities is for everyone who is recording their CPD on MyARB. So it's not for REBA members. It is purely for those who are recording on MyARB. And all you need to do to record is click on the create button. So you click. This pop-up box comes up and it takes you through everything you need to add for your record. So you choose the date of your activity. If your activity is more than a day long, so let's say it's a week, it's up to you whether you choose to put the start date or the end date. It's just to show that the activity happened in the year you're recording it. Topic, so you have a selection of topics. The first 2 will always be the mandatory topics. So this year it's environmental sustainability and fire and life safety. Then you've got business and practice. So this is if you've done CPD that helps you run your practice. For example, maybe you've installed a new financial system and you've had training on how to use the financial system. Or you've done some HR training, that would go into business and practice. You've got design, ethics, regulatory, specifications of projects. So that's when you have a product comes on the market and you undergo CPD to understand what that product does and how you can use it. And then you've got other. So if you've done a topic that doesn't relate to any of those listed, then you can just click on other and choose, and that will cover it. Then you need to write your learning reflection. Now we've got 4 questions there. What did I learn? How am I applying this to my practice? How has this improved my competence? What steps do I need to take next? You do not have to answer the questions in your learning reflection. You just need to make sure that you've got 2 of these points. So everyone must identify what they learned from their activity. And then you either need to identify how you've applied it to your practice or how it's improved your competence. And then if you know, what steps for future learning. So you would write your learning reflection here. And again, your learning reflection is your choice. How you write it is the style is your choice. So you can write it as note form, you can write it as paragraphs, you can write it however you want. So long as we can see what you've learnt and either how you've applied that learning to your practice or how it's improved your competence, then it's good. Now to save, you must click submit. If you don't click submit, you won't. Oh, I haven't. See, if you don't fill out all the options, then it won't let you save. So activity type, sorry, I forgot to go through that. You've got formal training, which is like a course or conference session. You've got peer discussion, practical experience, so on the job experience, research, self-directed learning. So this is if you've chosen to read an article or you're listening to a podcast or watching videos, anything you've chosen to do rather than it's an organised event. Teacher training. So if you teach or if you train and you've done research to help you deliver your training, then that can be considered CPD. And then you've got the option other again. So if none of the above help match what the activity is, you could just click on other. So we'll just put that. Write your learning reflection and then you hit submit. Again, sorry, my internet is quite slow. Normally does happen more quickly than this, I'm afraid. Okay, I'm going to cancel it because it's taken a bit too much time, but it will be quicker when you do it. So when you have saved it, it should appear here. If you don't see it, then it hasn't been saved. So you need to make sure it does save. It's been very slow, I'm afraid. But so you know it's saved if you can see the entrance that you entry that you've just made here. When you have made an entry, you will have the option to either edit it or delete it. So you can start an entry, think, oh, I haven't started using it in work yet. I want to do my learning reflection later. You can save it and then come back, click on edit, and then you'll be able to enter your learning reflection if you want. So that's how you enter your CPD log onto MyARB, and that's for anybody who is recording on MyARB. If you are REBA, you do not need to record on ARB. If you are REBA, you should just follow the REBA scheme and record on REBA's system. That's it. If you are selected for annual review, you will be asked to upload a copy of your REBA record to MyARB. And this is the section you'll do it in. Approve CPD records, and you have the upload button. You do not need to do it every year. You only need to upload if you have been selected. The selection process occurs in January, and you're notified by February if you have been selected for the annual review or not. So to upload, you would just click on upload. You need to confirm it's a REBA record. So you click on REBA and then click on upload. And then you can, it needs to be your Excel version of your REBA record. And then click on submit to save. There we go. And then you will see it here to record. Now, as you can see, so the log for the manually entered, this is how it will appear when you save it. So apologies for the slowness there. It will come through. So top section is for anyone who records on MyARB. Middle section are for REBA members. If they have been selected for annual review, they go there to upload. They will be given instructions when they're notified they've been selected for the annual review. The third section is your history. So at the moment, this is the first year, so you only have one record for your history, but next year you'll have 2024 and 2025, and then of course, all the preceding years after that. So that is a very quick review of how to upload your record. We go back to the PowerPoint. So Finn, can you just confirm we've gone back to the slides? Thank you. Okay, so What to include, as you've just said, as we've just gone through, you will record date of activity. So if longer than a day, you can choose to put the start or end date, up to you, how you want to do it. As I said, you've got to do topic, got to choose the activity type, and then you've got to do your learning reflection. Now, we often get asked, how much do I need to record? Now, this is a tricky one to answer because there is no answer. We do not set a minimum number of hours to complete, and we do not set a minimum number of points to collect. We recommend that you complete 8 activities, but at the end of the day, it is actually you who sets how much CPD you need to complete. So when I said about the PDP, you need to review what you've got coming up for the year. So while we recommend that you complete at least 8 CPD activities per year, including at least 1 CPD activity per mandatory topic, what needs to be considered is you. You need to consider how much you need to do. So some people, let's say they are semi-retired and do 3 similar jobs a year, are not going to need to do as much CPD as someone who has 5 years experience and 20 jobs in a year that are all different. So you need to consider your own development needs and what you need to do for that year to ensure you're competent. You should review your projects for the year, identify any areas where you could have a stronger understanding in. So i.e., where are your weaknesses? Where's your weakness in practical experience, your skills, your knowledge, or your understanding? Then you should review the mandatory topics if set for that year. Look at the competencies and identify any areas related to your work to develop in. These should be your priorities for CPD. So everyone's going to need at least 2 for if there's 2 mandatory topic sets. But the expectation is you will need to do more than 2 CPD activities to maintain your activity. Unless you're not working, you're going to need significantly more than 2. If you're not working, you still need to keep up to date. So we would expect the CPD related to keeping up to date with what's going on in the profession. Then if you have any other areas of any other topics, or whether the mandatory topics or something else, so maybe you want to specialize, then you should then focus your CPD development needs on those as well. So you should identify what your priorities are by looking at your projects, identify your weak areas and focus on those for your CPD. Review the mandatory topic competencies, see any areas that relate to your work and focus on them. And then anything else you want to develop in should be your CPD for the year. Right, we often get asked what to include in your learning reflection. So absolute, as I said earlier, you should include what you've learned. So this could be 1 lesson from an activity, or it could be multiple lessons. If you haven't learned from a CPD activity, you shouldn't include it. If you haven't learned, it's not helped you. And then you need to say how you have applied the learning to your practice and or how the learning has improved your competency. So for those that aren't working, you can't say how you've applied it to your practice, but you can say how it's improved your competency. Has it improved your understanding? Have you gained practical experience? Have you developed a new skill or honed an old skill? You can identify what your competency is, even if you haven't, if you're not currently working. And then finally, if known, but not mandatory to include any future learning steps under that topic. So the learning reflection is yours. It's not ours. It's not for us. It's for you. You should write in a style that is best for you. But I ask that you do consider these questions. If you come back in 6 months, 12 months, or 5 years, can you tell what you've learned from the activity from what you've written? Can you tell how you applied that learning to your practice, or can you tell how that learning developed your competency? If you can't answer those questions when you review your learning reflection, you haven't got the right information in it. If you can, then great, you've done a good learning reflection. Right, so as I said, it's your style, how you help. I'm going to show you 3 different examples of how it can be done, but these are just examples. You do not have to do it any of these ways. So one format, simplest, is the Q&A format. So you've got the question, what have I learnt? You give the answer, I have learnt X. And you just go through all the 4 questions. What have I learnt? How have I applied it? How has it improved my competency? Future steps. And you give the answer. Other option is a paragraph format. So exactly the same as before. What have I learnt? I learnt how to apply X on a fire suppressant system. Paragraph. They went through how to apply X to a different fire suppressant systems. Exactly the same information, just different format. And then the final example is the note format. So if you prefer notes, write it as a note. Discussion with colleague. Learned how to apply X on a fire suppressant system. I gain knowledge of how to do this. I'm going to try this on my next project. And that answers all what we're looking for. All 3 examples answer exactly what we're looking for in the learning reflection, but completely different styles of how to do it. So it is your choice how you form your learning reflection. But as I say, you must include what you've learnt, an explanation on either how you've applied it to learning to your work or how the learning has improved your competency. Now, remember, when you record on MyARB, you have the option to go back. So you can log the activity and then go back and add to your learning reflection if you once you've applied the learning to your practice. You can do that. That's absolutely fine. Right. What not to do for your learning reflection. So this is a new system for most of you. Most of you have been used to doing logging your hours or logging your points, and that's been the focus. But for here, our focus is the outcome, what you've learned. So if you can, please avoid only describing the activity. So you can describe the activity so long as you've got the key points in as well. And it might be useful for you to have a description of the activity to help you remember. So that's absolutely fine to include it, but don't just do the activity description. Make sure you've got what you've learned and how you've applied it. So, for example, certified designer course, 24 hours spread over 12 weeks, finished with an exam I passed. Or in-house training, practice session on environmental sustainability, what tools to use and matrix for tracking. Neither of these identify what the individual got from that activity. They simply say this is what the activity was about, but we don't know what they learned. So, or how they applied that learning to their work or how it improved their competency. And also try and avoid answering how much rather than how. So, for example, how did this improve my competency? Greatly. Well, okay, so that's great. It's improved your competency a lot, but in what way did it improve your competency? Did it improve your understanding? Did it give you practical experience? Did it give you a new skill? That's what we're looking for. We don't want to know how much it improved you. We want to know what developed. So the point should explain what aspect of your competency improved. So understanding, practical experience, skills, knowledge, or behavior. Right. Sorry, I'm going to skip this one and just go and come back to that one. We often get questioned, where do I upload my CPD certificates? Please don't. We don't want your CPD certificates. So as I said, this scheme is outcomes focused. We want to know what you, the individual, gained from your CPD. CPD certificates are about the input, what went into the activity, and they don't tell us what the individual got out of it. So for our scheme, we ask that you don't upload the certificates because they don't add anything to your record. Also, our CPD, we recognise both formal and informal activities. So formal activities often get a certificate, like a course, but informal activities, there are no certificates. So we can't ask for certificates if we recognise informal activities. So again, informal activities can be anything where you have learned from it. So it could be a discussion with a peer, it could be listening to someone on the bus, hearing a mistake they made, and you learn from that. It could be anything where you've learned and can apply that learning to your practice, or you can identify how it's improved your competency. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that has been useful. I am now going to hand it over to you guys and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Rosie. So we've had a few questions. So some of you sent in questions in advance when registering. We've had some questions coming in during the presentation, so do feel free to just keep firing them in. We've had a couple, which I want to get to now, just about REBA. A couple of, I suppose there's two types of questions really here. There's one of them, do we need to record CPD on MyARB if we're already recording on REBA? And then the sort of follow-on question from that one as well is, I am a REBA member, and how do I upload my REBA record? So I think those two questions are kind of linked, but do you just want to talk about that briefly, Rosie?
Yes, so REBA members, you do not need to do anything with MyARB until you are asked to. So if you must follow your REBA scheme in full, which includes inputting into the new section where it asks you what you've learned and how you've applied it to your practice. You must have that completed to be able to meet our requirements. But basically, if you follow the REBA scheme in full and record it on REBA, that's all you need to do. When you renew your registration, you'll be asked to confirm where you have recorded your CPD, and you'll be given the option of either MyARB or REBA. So when you renew your registration, you let us know, I've recorded it on REBA, and that's it. To upload, as the live demonstration showed, there is the middle section is specific for the REBA records, but you don't need to upload unless you have been selected for the annual review. You can if you want to, that's absolutely fine. And we're happy to give you another live demonstration if you want to, or we can send some guidance. But the reality is you don't need to. If you are selected for REBA, we're selected for annual review, we will give guidance in our email when we notify you that you have been selected. So we'll give you step-by-step guidance on how to upload. Thank you.
Super, thank you. We've got a question here, which is kind of an interesting one, given that the scheme is super new. It's we've been implementing it in a phased manner. So this question here, the sort of, does my record have to be completed before I can renew my registration for next year? So how is that actually working at the moment, Rosie?
Absolutely not. So you've got from January the 1st to December 31st to record your record. So when you renew your registration, you simply need to tell us where it's being recorded or where it will be recorded by the 31st. But no, you do not need a completed record to renew your registration.
And just, we've got another question here as well. Does this all start in January 2025? So can you kind of explain how we've been introducing the scheme? Because, yeah, the scheme is live right now.
It is. So it went live January 2024. And because it is a new system, completely, this is the first time architects have been asked to record and then submit their records. We wanted to give you a grace year. So 2024 was to get you introduced to the new scheme, to help you understand it. And then from January 2025, it will be mandatory. So to renew your registration from 2025 onwards, you must show that you have engaged with the CPD scheme. Now, it's not always possible to engage. So, for example, you've had to take off most of the year because of long-term sickness, or you've been on parental leave, which covers maternity, paternity, or adoption leave. And in which case, fair enough, you haven't had the ability to carry out your CPD, but you have the option to defer your record for that year. That's it. Thank you.
I guess it's fair to say that we are encouraging everyone, though, do participate in the scheme this year, because this is your chance to make mistakes and not get things right, and then to
Yes.
really know what you're doing next year.
Yes. And on that point, actually, it's very good. So the annual review, it's not a punishment. It's actually a positive thing. So it's quality assurance check for us that our registrants are engaging with the scheme. But everyone who is reviewed will be given guidance and advice. So it's actually very useful for you to have your record review. So let's say the learning reflection, you're not quite understanding how to record it. So you're recording the activity itself rather than what you're learning. So the annual review, you'll be given guidance on how to identify what you learned and get the most out of your CPD. So don't fear the annual review. It's a positive thing. And wherever possible, we will always give you the guidance to be able to make the changes to meet the requirements. We're not looking to punish or kick anyone off the register. We're looking to help and develop you. So we will always give you the support and the opportunity to meet the requirements rather than say, nah, that's it, you're off. We're not going to do that.
Yeah. So we had a couple of questions about how architects can submit their REBA records to us. But now we've had the sort of reverse of that question. We've had a couple of questions asking how can architects submit their ARB records to REBA? So the system isn't backwards compatible, is it, Rosie?
No. So for our scheme, we're activities focused and it's the learning reflection that's important. With REBA, same with them. They want the learning reflection, but they are based on hours and they don't reckon there's a difference between formal and informal. So our recording system doesn't pick up the points that REBA's system does, which is why we're not compatible. REBA more than meets our requirements, so that's why we can accept theirs. But because we don't record the number of hours and because we don't differentiate between formal and informal, we can't be recognised by them because they have a difference. So unfortunately, you can't. Yeah.
We have a couple of questions here from architects who are semi-retired. We have a question as well from an architect who is retired. So can you maybe speak to that? What do architects need to do if they're semi-retired, or indeed if they're retired? Do they need to participate in the scheme?
Yes. So let's address semi-retired first. Whether you work part-time, whether you are semi-retired, it doesn't matter. If you're on the register, you need to demonstrate you are maintaining your competency. So it might be you don't need to do as much CPD as someone working 50 hours a week with lots of different projects. That's fair enough, but you still need to engage with the scheme. So again, what you need to do is review your year. Okay, I need to make sure I'm up to date with these regulations. I need to make sure I'm meeting the mandatory topic requirements and carry out CPD for that. As I said, we recognise informal CPD as much as formal. So if you feel that you can't go to the courses, that's absolutely fine. Keeping yourself up to date with your own reading, that's absolutely fine as CPD. But if you are retired, semi-retired or working part-time, you need to keep up with the CPD scheme. Those that are retired, you need to think about whether you need to be on the register or not. So if you are completely retired and you don't do anything, you don't offer advice to the local community, you don't look at projects or planning, you don't do anything related to the profession, you can still refer to yourself as an architect socially without being on the register. However, if you do anything professional, so giving advice is still considered professional work, then you must be on the register. So if you don't need to be on the register, I would suggest maybe thinking about retiring fully from the register. But if you still maintain some work, then yes, you're going to have to maintain engage with the CPD. Again, may not need to do as much CPD as the next architect, but you still need to engage with the scheme.
So during your presentation, you explained that architects can't submit certificates as evidence of their CPD. We do have a question that was sent in from an architect who wants to know why they can't well, they're asking if they're able to submit their CPD in the form of an Excel document. So no certificates, but again, are architects able to use other forms of files, or how can they submit their CPD?
At the moment, no, we can only accept REBA as the alternative record. Now, this is simply because we need to make sure the different formats meet our requirements. So this policy is being regularly reviewed. And if and when we can open it up to other records, we will notify them. But every alternative record will need to be reviewed by ARB first to check that it does give us the right relevant information. So at the moment, no, we can't accept any alternative other than REBA. And it has to be REBA's Excel version that we will accept.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think for architects as well, if you are recording your CPD locally, maybe it'd be worth having a look at MyARB, seeing what format that we need it in, and then setting up your Excel file or your Word document, however you're choosing to record it locally on your computer, having it set up that you can easily transfer that into MyARB when the
Exactly.
time comes.
And I think it's also a good point here to say, same for those that follow other schemes. So at the moment, we can only accept REBA. So if you follow a different scheme, like the Irish architect scheme, or overseas, like New Zealand or France, we certainly can accept the same CPD activities, but you do need to log it on MyARB or REBAs if you're a REBA member as well.
Yeah. There's an interesting question here from an anonymous attendee. They've asked, since when can we enter information? I mean, if it is an ongoing teaching, for example. So I think what they mean is if they're engaging in a sort of like continuing activity, how can they turn that into something which is going to make sense as a CPD activity for our
Okay.
scheme?
Entirely up to them. There's two ways. So the first way is to consider it as one activity. So you'll choose whether you do the start date or the end date, and then you list all the learning outcomes that you've had in the learning reflection. The longer the activity, I would say that it's going to get more, it's going to be very difficult to put everything into the one learning reflection. So the other option is to break it down and do it per topic or per day that you've done the teaching, and then identify it that way. Do a different learning reflection for each time you enter it as an activity. And we're not going to say, oh, well, this is the same activity. You can't do that. You can't have it as multiple. We're not going to say that. It's you. So if you've learned multiple lessons, it's probably easier to identify it as separate activities.
So we know there's lots of architects on the register who don't work in traditional practice, let's say. We had a couple of questions today from architects who are working in academic settings. And again, we know there's people working client side, there's people working for contractors. So for those sorts of people, how can they talk about, how can they make sure that their the CPD that they're doing, how can they make sure that it's relevant for our scheme?
Okay, so a key principle of the scheme is that it's tailored by the individual for their own development and practice needs. So this means that you carry out CPD that's relevant to your role and your location. So if you are an academic lecturer, then your CPD needs to be relevant to your job at the university or education provider that you work with. So it could be related to your teaching. It could be related to any pastoral care you have. It could be related to any managerial responsibilities you have. So remember, your CPD needs to be holistic, your whole professional role, not just one focus of it. So anyone that has multiple responsibilities needs to make sure all of those responsibilities, well, not every year, but the key areas are covered under their CPD. So, for example, an urban planner needs to make sure they're doing CPD relevant to being an urban planner. If you're based overseas, you need to make sure the CPD is relevant to your location. There's no value in updating yourself on UK regulations if you deal with New Zealand regulations. So it's got to be relevant to you and your role. You still need to meet the mandatory topic requirements, which is at least one CPD per topic set, but where possible, make sure it's relevant to your role. So, for example, fire and life safety, often academics will have to do mandatory training for the university related to the fire safety. That would count towards the mandatory topic. If there is anywhere in any role that you can't find anything relevant to your role under either mandatory topics, then that's fair enough. But look at developing your competency. So basic develop your understanding of the topic. That's always useful. It's never a bad thing to have more knowledge.
Yeah, that's so true. There's an interesting question here. They haven't asked us how many hours they should spend doing CPD. What they'd like to know is how much time they should spend recording their CPD on MyARB. Do we give any advice on that?
It shouldn't be excessive. So I imagine when you first get going and you're doing your learning reflection, it's the learning reflection that's going to take up most of your time. So yes, be prepared when you first start that the learning reflection might take a bit of time. You don't want to spend too much time on it, and just keep to the simple points. What have I learned? How have I applied it to my practice? And or how has it improved my competency? Any future steps I want to do it. Keep it simple, so to help reduce the time. But yes, I imagine when you first start, it's going to take a bit longer, but once you get into the flow of it and you get used to writing your learning reflections, it should be quicker. So I would say writing one activity at the start maybe take up to 15 minutes, but by the time you've done 5 or 6 of them, you'll be like, it's less than 5 minutes at all, if that, writing your learning reflection.
We've had a couple of questions from architects who aren't based in the UK. If they're working abroad and gaining experience in another country, can that experience be CPD for our scheme?
Absolutely, and it's a must. So anything when you're working abroad, the experience you learn abroad is what you need to be recording. We don't want to know that you're learning UK if you're based in another country. That's not helpful to you. It's got to be helpful to you as an individual.
Yeah, and I've got a question here as well. So if somebody has accidentally uploaded some certificates, is that going to cause any problems as long as they give us the stuff that we need, or?
Nope, as long as they've given us what they need. If you want, we can delete them, but it's not necessary. They're there, it's fine. What my biggest concern is people uploading the certificates and thinking that's enough. No. We've got to have the proper log to meet our requirements, but don't worry if you have uploaded this year, just remember not to do it next year.
I guess then would we say if people want to gather their CPD and certificates in MyARB, is that something we'd be encouraging them to do, or?
Not really. You can do it in safekeeping documents, but I mean, if you've got an electronic copy, you've already got an electronic copy. How many places do you need to save it, really?
Yeah.
So I would say just keep it on your home system.
We've got a question here again from an anonymous attendee, just asking, how is my CPD assessed? So can you talk about if someone is selected for annual review, what actually is going to happen?
So as I said earlier, the annual review is a quality assurance check for us. So we're just making sure architects are engaging with the process. And the reality is we cannot review every individual and say, this is perfect for your particular career, but have you thought about X, Y, and Z? That's not possible. So what we're looking for in the review is, has the registrant engaged with CPD? Have they taken the time to reflect on it? And does their reflection show that they have identified what they've learnt? Does their reflection show that they know how they've applied that learning or how the learning has improved their competency? Have they considered future steps? And it's that simple. That's all we're really looking for. If you do choose to do a PDP, that's more useful for us for the review, because it will show that whether you've met your development goals or not. So it's not an in-depth analysis of every individual. It is simple, basic check. Have they done it? Are they getting the most out of it? If they're not, then we'll work with them to show them how to make sure they get the most out of their learning reflection.
We've got a question here asking us, can we recommend any good CPD providers to make it all easier? So is that something that we're doing? Are we recommending CPD providers?
No.
Yeah.
We cannot endorse, validate, or accredit any CPD providers. The biggest reason is everyone is different. Everyone learns differently. So what works for one person may not work for another registrant. So we didn't want to get trapped in that and have people going, well, this was absolutely useless for me. It's not worth that. What we do is signpost on our website to CPD providers just to give you a starting point. So it is entirely your choice whether you even look at them, but it's entirely your choice whether you undertake CPD with those providers listed on our website. It is only a starting point. But I would say, don't forget, informal CPD can be just as valuable as formal. So consider how you learn. If you're a reader, then maybe self-directed reading is the best way to go for you. But just consider what your learning style is and look for different activities that meet that learning style.
Um, on that note, there is a question here again from an anonymous attendee, just making the point that CPD is often, if they're doing formal courses, it can often be expensive. So again, do we just want to emphasize you don't have to do paid courses to get your CPD?
Absolutely. Yeah. And often the course might not be relevant to you. It might be relevant to the topic you want, but you might not get a lot out of it. So make sure that you have a look at all available activities and do consider the informal ones as much as the costly ones.
Um, I've got a question here, one of the pre-submitted ones. They've asked how far back do you want the record? So I think what they're asking there is, can I only submit CPD for stuff that I've done this year, or can I pick something that I've done last year? Is that still relevant, or does that become outdated?
Okay. So the scheme launched this year, so we're only looking from 2024 onwards, and each year you should only record what you did in that year. So 2024's record should only have activities that you did in 2024. 2025 should only have 2025 activities. So it's a year-long record for the year you're recording it in.
Mhm.
So we're only for this year, we're only looking for those record relating to 2024 activities.
Yeah. So we're just coming towards the end. We've got about 10 minutes. We've got a few more questions here. So again, if there's anything, if you still have a question, I mean, by all means, fire it in. I'll try and get to as many of them as possible. Just as we're coming to the end, I'd like to run a poll just to find out how people have found this session, whether you found it useful. So again, it should pop up on your screen. If you could just let us know, that'd be really helpful. Um, Okay, so looking through the questions we have here, there's a question from Eleni. So for 2024, it's encouraged but not mandatory to be completed. Is that something we'd agree with, or?
It's nobody is going to be removed from the register for non-compliance in 2024, but it is expected everyone does their CPD this year, and it is expected that you've either recorded on MyARB or REBA. If you haven't, you do have the option to defer your 2024 record. So we can't force you, we can't say it's absolutely mandatory, but we strongly recommend you do. If you haven't, then you can defer, but understand anyone who defers is always automatically selected for the next annual review. So anyone who defers in 2024 will be have their 2025 CPD record reviewed. So I would strongly suggest if you have done CPD this year, just get it up on MyARB, get it recorded. There's no minimum. So as long as you've done at least one CPD activity for the mandatory topics and got some others, that's absolutely fine. Easier to save your deferment for when you really need it.
I've got a question here that was sent in advance, and it's kind of a two-parter. So they've asked how many hours of CPD should I have done? So I guess we've asked people to do, we're recommending 8 activities. Does that translate into time? No.
No, it doesn't, because any experience where you've learnt, you could consider CPD.
Yeah.
So it could be a 15-minute article, an article that you've read in 15 minutes. That would count as a CPD activity. It could be a whole project that went completely wrong and completely failed. And it was not until you've done the evaluation at the end, you've identified where it went wrong, why it went wrong, and what you can do. So that could be hours and hours and hours to be one CP activity. So unfortunately, no, we can't equate it. We can just equate it to the number of activities.
And the second part of their question, they've asked, so if somebody is found to not meet the scheme's requirements after having been selected for annual review, what would happen to them?
Okay, so first of all, let's see what the outcomes are. You've got 3 outcomes: meets requirements, needs action, doesn't meet requirements. So meet requirements, quite obvious. The reviewer says, yeah, you've ticked all the boxes. Doesn't meet requirements. Now that, to be straight away given doesn't meet requirements, is likely that you have said you've done CPD on your registration renewal, been selected, and then submitted a blank record. That's the only way that someone can be automatically doesn't meet requirements, if they have basically not told the truth and submitted a blank record. Needs action is where we work with the architect. So, for example, they've done some activities but haven't written the learning reflection. We'll go back and say, can you do X, Y, and Z? And we will go back and forth for the entire review period until either they have met requirements or have demonstrated that they're not going to do it, or they haven't engaged with the process. And in which case, then if they haven't engaged and have not worked with us to get their record to meet requirements, then that becomes doesn't meet requirements. But we will, the review period is February to September. The first needs actions would be in February, so we'd initially have till March to make the actions, but really they've got to the end of September. We will have the 5 months to work with them to meet requirements. Yeah. As I said, this isn't about punishing anyone or catching anyone out. We want everyone to develop.
Yeah.
So we see it better that we work with you and show you what we need you to identify, rather than just say, nah, not good enough, off you go.
Yeah, no, we don't want anybody to be punished, do
No.
we? I think it's fair to say. There's a couple of questions have just come in, which are all, I think, sort of related. They're all to do with the mandatory topics. Okay, really easy, sort of quick fire one. What are the mandatory topics for this year?
Fire and life safety and environmental sustainability. We've got competencies for each topic on our website, so please go have a look and read the information about how to meet the mandatory topic requirements.
And there's a question then from a D Moss. So they've asked, is there a requirement for a certain number of core curriculum CPD hours similar to REBA? So with those mandatory topics, how much time do people actually have to spend on them, or how many activities?
All right, so the requirement is at least 1 CPD activity per topic. But the reality is, are you really going to have met your own individual development needs in one activity? For some, that might be a yes, but for others, it might be no. So it's down to the individual to actually identify how much CPD they need to do per mandatory topic. The minimum is 1 CPD activity, but please consider your own development needs. Can you meet your needs in one activity? If not, you need to do more.
So could somebody do one activity and have that activity meet multiple topics? Is that possible?
It is. They would need to record it several times then,
Yeah.
because of the different topics.
Mhm. So there's a question here from an anonymous attendee. Do you want 8 separate topic areas? So what if you have several CPD activities under one topic area?
Again, it's down to the individual. So what
Yeah.
does the individual need? So we would certainly expect at least 3. So the 2 mandatory topics and at least another topic. And that would be minimum for those that are not working or part-time or semi-retired. But anyone fully working should be doing quite a few topics, because their work covers a lot of topics. So again, reflect on what your development needs are, and then you decide how many topics you need to do.
So I've got a question here from David. Again, it's one question, but I think we can kind of split it into two parts. So David has asked, is there a plan to coordinate with other bodies like REBA or the RIAI? So we only need to record it in one place. So I suppose the first bit about REBA, we can say that we are already
Yeah.
collaborating with REBA. So if you are a REBA member, you can record your CPD with REBA, and you don't need to also record it on MyARB. But are we planning to work with other membership bodies?
So Scotland, we are still talking to them about it. We talked to everyone before we launched the scheme. Let's make that clear. So REBA was able to engage with us and able to make the changes so that they were compatible with our scheme. I understand the Welsh and the Northern Irish actually record on REBA anyway. That's their system, and it's the Scots who are slightly different. We're still open to recognising them the same as REBA, but there needs to be further discussion on that. And the same with the Irish scheme as well. Again, if we can make sure their record meets our needs, we'd be happy to accept it. So it's a policy we will review regularly, and where we can, we will open it up to other schemes.
Kind of a quick one here. So what is the latest date that somebody can submit their CPD?
11:59 p.m., 31st of December.
I mean, but I think we'd hope people have better things to be doing. New
I
Year's
really
Eve.
hope so. And I would like to make it very clear, stroke of midnight of 31st of December, your 2024 records are locked. So you cannot go back once you're in 2025 and record your 2024 records.
Yeah. So we've just got a couple of minutes left. So I'm just looking through. There's still a few questions here. So again, apologies if we haven't got to yours. Daniel has asked, can this be watched again? Yes, it's being recorded. So we are going to send this to everybody who's here with us today. We've got not a question, as much as it is a statement from an anonymous attendee just saying, I need to add some CPD ASAP. Thanks for the reminder. So yeah, brilliant. Delighted to hear that. Yeah, just looking through these. Are there any that we haven't sort of touched on yet? As a REBA member, should I complete the PDP section? What's our advice on that?
Only if you want to, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just looking through the ones that we have here just to make sure there are any topics that we haven't
Well,
already
can I just
touched
raise a
on.
point? So I've been saying that we'll accept REBA records. It's got to be the Excel version only. Now, some of you may have already tried to upload your REBA record Excel version and found that you couldn't. This was a glitch in our system and has been resolved. So from now on, everyone can upload to Excel, no problem.
Brilliant. Okay, so we've just got a couple of minutes left, so I think I might start wrapping things up. I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined us here today and for sticking with us. I hope you found it useful and are feeling more confident about recording your CPD. Of course, we recommend that you spread the task of recording your CPD out throughout the year, but look, if you haven't started yet, you still have time, is our message here today. You know, there's no
Yep.
time like the
We've got
present.
over a month.
Yeah. If you do have any questions about recording your CPD that arise while you're recording it, please do get in touch. We've got a dedicated CPD email. That's cpd@aib.org.uk. So yeah, look, fire anything to us that you're unsure of, and we'll be able to help. And we'll include that email address in the follow-up email we'll be sending with the recording. Rosie, do you have any final words that you want to say, or?
No, just any questions, contact us and we'll be happy to go through it. If you work for a company with a large team and it would be useful to have a session, I'm happy to arrange an online meeting and go through it with your team.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, well, look, that brings us to the end. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here with us today. And yeah, best of luck with recording your CPD. Take care. Bye-bye.